took a stand against my brother-in-law's insults, demanding an apology and refusing daycare duties, leaving my niece caught in the middle. I, 29 male, and my wife, 30F, have 2 kids 3 and 5 old. My wife works a full-time office job, while I work from home with extremely flexible hours. Basically, as long as I meet my deadlines, no one really cares how many hours it took or what time of day I work outside of some Zoom meetings. My sister, 26F, let's call her Barb, and her husband, 30M, let's call him Nick, live nearby and work full-time jobs. They have a daughter, 5F, let's call her Tracy. Because of my comfortable work schedule, when our kids started going to daycare, we basically decided that I'll be dropping off and picking up my niece from daycare alongside my own kids. I didn't really mind, and I thought it was great for my kids to spend time with their cousin. I get along with Tracy as well, and always thought I was her cool uncle. She's a sweet kid and usually well behaved. So anyway, most days I bring her and my kids back to our house. I make them snacks or dinner, and in the afternoon/evening my sister comes to pick them up. A few days ago the 5-yo kids were watching Bluey on the TV as I was preparing snacks with my 3-yo, and I suddenly heard yelling. I rushed over to see what's up, and my son was yelling at her that my dad's not a girl. While my niece yells back he is. He's a fucked. That's like a girl. The word is different in my language, but the meaning holds, as is the distinction between using it versus simply addressing a gay person. I'm kind of in shock at first, but I turned off the TV, and I sat her down and began explaining that this is a very bad word and we shouldn't be calling people that, and that regardless, I'm not a girl. And because this is a bad word, she should apologize to me because we don't act mean to each other in this family. And if I hear this again, I'm going to talk to her parents and she's going to get in trouble. She said she won't get in trouble because that's what her dad called me, and he's not in trouble. I was stunned. I told her that regardless of what her dad said, it's a very bad word and she's not to use it with me or in my presence, and that she should apologize regardless because it hurt my feelings, which she did, because she's a really good kid. We talked some more and I prodded her about other things her parents said, and from what I gather, getting info out of a 5-year-old being obviously a difficult and unreliable process. Nick, my Bill, told my sister in Tracy's presence that men shouldn't be sitting at home all day and doing childcare, that cooking is a woman's duty, as is cleaning and really most of the things I do around my house, and that I'm a girl. I interpret this as not really a man, because I do housework and my wife earns more money than me. I explained to her the best I could that man and woman could work from an office or from home, and that my wife or Barb working long hours from the office doesn't make them men, and vice versa, but I didn't dwell on it with her since it's not really her fault. I didn't immediately bring it up with my sister because I figured it would be a difficult conversation and I didn't want to have it in front of the kids, and I wanted to talk it out with my wife first as well. I did talk to my wife that evening and she seemed really upset as well. I told her that I think I should demand an apology from Nick and my sister, and she agreed. I called my sister and told her what happened, and she said that it's just a word and I'm blowing it out of proportion, and obviously Nick doesn't dislike me. I said I don't care whether he does or doesn't dislike me, he is talking shit about me behind my back to my niece and to her, and she is apparently very chill about this, rather than standing up for me. She said that was how Nick was, and I should stop being a drama queen. I told her to fuck off, and if that was how she felt she could pick up her own child from daycare, and hung up. I know it was really short notice and rude, but I really felt like I was being disrespected by people I did so much for over the years, and were my family. My wife said she understood, and that I shouldn't back down until I at least get a proper apology. The next 2 days were a weekend and there was no daycare. I assumed there would be calls or texts from Barb, but there was nothing. In fact, the suspicious lack of any messages or calls made me think she didn't take my words seriously, and this actually got me even more angry. The calls did come when it was time to pick up Tracy for daycare and I, obviously, didn't come. I dropped my own kids off, and didn't even answer for a while. I know it was petty, but I was stewing for 2 days and figured letting Barb stew for a few hours seemed really appropriate and felt really good. Around noon when she called again I did pick up. I was going to smugly tell her that I was ready for my apology, and we would put it behind us, but I didn't get to. Instead, she went off on me, about how I was irresponsible and I flaked, and she was so late for work because of me, to which I just said I told you I wasn't going to pick her up. You had 2 days to make arrangements. And she kept yelling at me, so I hung up again. She kept calling and sending me texts about picking Tracy up from daycare, to which I said I will not be, then stopped replying. When I came to pick my kids up, Tracy was expecting me to take her as well, and I didn't, which was very rough on me and her both. Like, I know it's not her fault and she's 5, and she suddenly doesn't get to go over to our place and play and have snacks, but at the same time, I didn't want to just let this thing go. I felt like I deserved an apology, and still do, so I explained that me and her mom were fighting, but I'll pick her up again when we work it out. She obviously didn't take it well, because she's 5, but I apologized, took my kids and left. Well, a bit later I got a call from my mom. Barb roped her into picking up Tracy, but my mom is disabled, so she was having a really hard time with Tracy, and asked me why I was being mean to Barb. I told her everything, expecting her to take my side, but instead she also pulled a "you know how Nick is," to which I replied that the more I realize how Nick is the less I like it, and if he thinks all this shit in general and about me specifically, I sure as fuck ain't going to be doing free labor for him. She said I was blowing this all out of proportion, and I told her I wasn't the one doing it, because all I asked for was a fucking apology, and everyone else seemed to prefer all of this shit to just giving it to me, to which she said I should just be the bigger man and not let it get to me, to which I said I was done and to have fun with Tracy. That evening I got a call from Nick himself, which I was hesitant about, but chose to answer on the off chance that I was actually about to get that apology. Nope. Apparently my behavior is causing Barb great distress and we're family, and how can I do this to my own sister? I told him that since we're family, how can he talk shit about me to his kid, which I take care of daily, and he said he was only joking, and it was all in good fun. I told him it was neither good nor fun for me, and I want my apology. He blew up on me, telling me I was a F/T and couldn't take a joke, and called me a hysterical little girl. I told him to fuck off and that I was done with him and hung up. This led to a bunch of calls from Barb and my mom, which I didn't answer. Barb texted me that it wasn't fair for Tracy to pay the price for me being petty, and I told her that it wasn't fair for Tracy to pay the price of her parents being ungrateful pieces of shit, to which she just yelled at me a bunch about how she was going to lose her job and I was being cruel to her and to mom. I told her I was done, and unless her next message was an apology I will be blocking her number, and it wasn't, so now I blocked her. Past few days my mom's been picking up Tracy and it's been really rough seeing her in daycare and explaining that grandma's going to pick her up, which she hates, and tells me she isn't having fun with grandma and wants to come over to our place, and it's breaking my heart, but at the same time, I never got a single apology from anyone but the 5 and I feel like letting this go would just be telling my family that it's okay to ignore my boundaries. But at the same time I do love my niece and I don't want to traumatize her or have her resent me. She is / a good kid and none of it is her fault. So, Ada? And what do I do? The angle of Nick actually wanting Barb to quit her job is not one I considered, but now I think it might actually have merit, and it makes me very worried for her. At the same time I can't really do much until she at least acknowledges that that's just how Nick is, so stop overreacting isn't going to fly with me. I also assume it's only a matter of time until my mom is no longer an option. She's already having a hard time, so I hope I get a chance to talk to her about it, ideally because she sees my point of view, but I'll settle for because she's desperate. I don't know what sort of childcare they'll be able to afford. They took out a large mortgage on a house they can barely afford. I will also make certain to stress upon Tracy that I love her and none of this is her fault. Update 1. My dad died from a heart attack 2 years ago, which came as no surprise because he smoked a lot and lived a pretty unhealthy life, so we weren't really surprised. It wasn't his first either. He was a great grandpa and a great dad before that and right up to the end. But his death left my mom alone and she doesn't work. My mom has MS, which is basically mostly steady, but slowly gets worse over time and flares up occasionally, and is made worse by stress, which my mom goes through now. A flare-up often means the level she gets back to isn't quite what it was before, so we mostly try to keep her stress-free. My dad had life insurance so her house is paid for and she had a little money, but there's also a caretaker coming over 3 times a week to clean, cook, do shopping etc., which she can't afford, so me and my wife pay for. As I mentioned in a comment on the original post, me and my wife are doing probably better off financially than Barb and Bill. They have a fancy house and fancy cars, but they have a mortgage and loans, so the great response I got made me think about this shit again, and I thought how I could stand my ground without giving up on Tracy altogether, and figured there was no perfect solution, and I had to settle on something / I took the day off work because I just needed to process and deal with this shit. One comment on the original post really got to me, about how someone would feel in Tracy's place, and I just can't do it to her now. I know this isn't the update some of you have wanted, but I just can't. I love her like she was one of my own, and my kids do as well, and it's not her fault. I unblocked my sister because obviously if I'm going to be interacting with her child, she needs to be able to reach me. I talked to my mom during the day and she was, again, distraught about having to pick Tracy up, which is pretty hard on her. I told her I was willing to do it, but I'm coming over and she's going to have to hear me out, to which she agreed. I talked to her for a long time, avoiding snark and lashing out this time, and just explaining that basically how serious Nick was or how he is doesn't matter. I used that rocking the boat analogy someone linked to in comments, and further stressed my point by saying that it shouldn't matter if I was justified or not in getting upset. I am her child, and if something upset me it at least warrants giving me the benefit of the doubt before siding against me, and eventually it seemed to come through. She apologized and we hugged it out, and I think she got it. She's not a very confrontational person and generally really tries to keep the peace, and this time she went about it wrong. I'm not saying I'm not mad, but she's my mom and she apologized. I explained to her that she shouldn't be covering for me because that means I have no leg to stand on when confronting Nick and Barb, and she was receptive to it. I texted my sister that we needed to talk and I'll drop Tracy off at their place tonight, to which I got a stoic thumbs up. I picked Tracy up from daycare today and she was overjoyed. She was actually a little possessive of me, staying by my side all afternoon instead of running off to play, which was cute but also made me feel like shit a little, because that's impact me not picking her up. I explained to the best of my ability that she's not in trouble and I'm not angry with her, but I am / angry with her parents and we need to work that out, but I'll do my best to not stop picking her up anymore, which she was really happy about. I dropped her off in the evening and once she was in bed I sat down to talk with Barb and Nick. I told them flat out that mom wasn't going to be covering for them anymore, and if they didn't let me finish what I had to say, I would get up and leave, and they can find new arrangements for Tracy. Didn't mean it, but they don't need to know that. They weren't happy, but they were willing to listen, so that's progress, or at least the threat working. I explained that this was the situation now. I don't need them to mean their apology, but I sure as fuck was going to need one. This was principle now. I have spent years taking care of their child, and if they wanted to be assholes, I wasn't going to do it for free. So this was how it goes now. 1. I am no longer going to be dropping her off in the morning until further notice. There was no excuse for the way Nick acted, and it needed to have some lasting impact. 2. I was no longer going to be paying for family outings and family vacations. It was a man's job to support his family, so good luck with that. The exception is Tracy, who is always welcome. 3. If I hear any more BS being talked about me behind my back, I was going to start charging them for my service. My plan was to dangle the thing they want, childcare. Restoring it, but at the same time giving some repercussions and threat of things getting hard for them again. I also laid it on pretty thick about how I am a man, so I obviously have my pride and can't have that be disrespected, even by my own family who I obviously love. Don't really consider Nick family, but figured he wouldn't figure that out. Nick was not happy about this, and my sister actually had to take him outside to talk it out without me, but eventually they did agree to it, and I got my, admittedly half-hearted, apology. I could probably press it further, but I didn't want to risk having to either back down or hurt Tracy again, so I took this. There were no tears and no warm hugs, but I get to walk away with what I wanted, giving them some payback without having to give up my time with Tracy. I still plan to talk to my sister alone about her relationship with Nick and about how she sees me, but I figure I should let things calm down a bit before I do. I know this isn't the resolution some, maybe most, of you wanted, but at the end of the day I need to find a solution I can live with, and for me this is it. Update 2. These past few months things have been tense, but okay. I haven't gone back on my word about dropping her off, and haven't been paying for meals or anything, really. I also, having realized what sort of man Nick is, I've been gently trying to get some alone time with my sister and ask her some questions about their relationship. Has he been isolating her? Is she financially dependent on him? Can she go out with her friends? How jealous does he get? Some of her answers made me a little uncomfortable, but I can't really force her into anything. I'm not trying to excuse the way she treated me, but also I think she's in a bad situation herself, and I don't want her to become more isolated than she is, so I'm gently trying to guide her down the right path, dropping hints like, isn't it like what your really bad ex used to do? And the like. I don't think she quite realizes how deep into this she is, but I also know from past experience that forcing her into anything is really going to mostly cause her to pull away and become more stubborn, so I'm trying to guide her to the right conclusion gently, while making sure she knows she has a place to go and someone to support her if she ever chooses to break things off. Nick hasn't really been anything with me. I don't think his feelings about me changed much, but he's basically avoiding interacting with me and has to work a lot when we get together as a family, which I think might be the best outcome for everyone involved. Tracy has been sweet. She's slowly learning to read alongside my oldest, and still enjoys bad words. We just use less mean bad words now. Hoop has been a hit. She's now a big fan of the Tom Cardy song Have You Checked You Butthole? We've been pretty good about making clear the difference between rude words and hurtful words. Over the holidays we went on a trip. At first Barb and Nick were probably shocked that I was serious when I said they were welcome to join us, but I wasn't paying for anyone but Tracy, if they choose to send her along. I talked it over with Barb, leaving it up to her how to convey that to Nick, who, as stated, was avoiding me. I assume he didn't take it well, but I don't really have a way of knowing for sure. Barb, for her part, tried doubling down, getting me to cave, but I stood my ground. I said I wasn't paying for things and I meant it. I explained, again, that this wasn't about a specific trip, but about the fact that I used to believe that they genuinely and unconditionally loved me, and that is just no longer the case. It's not something I can just unfeel. I need this to feel like I am standing up for myself, and she can choose to respect my feelings and my decision or to be angry, but I won't back down on this, and the only choice that is up to her is to come on her own dime or not to, and send Tracy along with us or not to if she chooses not to come. She ended up sending her along and we had a blast. My wife seems much relieved to no longer have to put up with Nick as often. She apparently had him pegged from the get-go, but wanted me to come to my own conclusions, and was hoping he wasn't as bad as he seemed to her initially. She's glad I'm standing up for myself and is glad we still get to hang out with Tracy. I still hope someday Barb comes to her senses about her situation, and I will support her fully if she does, despite not quite being over what she either thought about me or at least didn't stand up for me to Nick about, but she's still my family. Update 3. Firstly, something utterly unexpected happened at Tracy's school. Turns out, there's a new program focused on empowering young kids to understand inclusivity and kindness. A bit ironic given my recent woes. Anyway, they had a family day, and I thought, why not? It could be a good bonding opportunity for Tracy and maybe a teaching moment. I didn't mention it to Barb at first. I wanted to check it out myself before involving her, just in case it was something that Nick would have his usual opinions about. Anyway, Tracy was thrilled, seemed like she'd been hearing whispers about it in school already. Fast forward to the event, which was honestly impressive. Watching the kids interact through activities that highlight acceptance, irrespective of gender roles or identity, was something. They even had a cute puppet show, which was all about treating everyone with kindness, no matter how they look, what they do, or who earns more money. Definitely got me a little choked up seeing the wide-eyed wonder opened in kids' eyes during the show when the message clicked. To my surprise, Barb showed up late, flustered but eager. I didn't know if it was solidarity or her curiosity was piqued, or maybe she wanted to make sure Nick's rhetoric hadn't tainted Tracy too much. The energy there must have hit her because a look passed her face when Tracy ran over to one of the teachers to show her drawing about my awesome family. I didn't pry, you know me, not yet, but it felt like a crack. Then comes the drama. Nick shows up right when we're leaving the event. Yup, I did not see that one coming. Turns out, Barb told him about it, she still can't keep a secret, and he must have felt the pressure because he was there putting on his best good dad face. I stayed cautious, holding my temper in, letting him make the first move. He surprised me again, went straight for a handshake and started talking in a tone I didn't expect, with more diplomacy. Maybe it was the crowd, or Barb had a stern talking, but it was something, an attempt to bridge the chasm he created. Nick started explaining, awkwardly, about how misunderstandings happen, trying to flow in the direction of boys will be boys without directly acknowledging fault, but somewhere in the spiel and tone he was ready to move past it for Tracy's sake. I let him talk, figuring Mom taught me better than to make a scene in public, but inside it felt like a step, however measly, towards something. We didn't shake on it, but there was an implied truce. Then Barb slipped me a note when I was strapping Tracy into her booster. It simply read, "Can we talk?" Later that night, after dinner, we had a rare sister-brother heart-to-heart on the porch over some lukewarm tea. She was emotional but clear-cut during our talk. She confessed that seeing everything Tracy was exposed to, with Nick's ideology slowly creeping into her parenting, scared her. Our discussions had been eating away at her too, and she was trying to recalibrate what kind of environment they were creating for their daughter. Barb's admission was jarring but comforting because it felt she finally saw the dysfunctional bits I've been subtly addressing. In a twist of fate, she got a small hike at work. Go Barb, that alleviation got her thinking. More freedom, fewer financial chains from Nick. Albeit small, they're changes, and if you know Barb, this is huge. She's determined now, and I see a spark that wasn't there before, a curiosity and yearning for more, one Tracy can definitely reap benefits from. I'll be cautiously embedding myself around Nick, but it seems like the family GPS took a favorable turn, tentatively plotted, with potential chances for new roads. I'm cautiously optimistic, but it feels like Barb's taking steps and maybe Tracy will grow in a space where labels don't confine her uncle or anyone into boxes they don't fit. Update 4. So, here's what happened. Last weekend was supposed to be just a casual family barbecue at my place, the kind where the kids run around in the yard, and adults pretend to watch over them while grilling and chatting. I thought it would be a good opportunity to further mend fences since things have slightly smoothed over with Barb. To my shock, she arrived early with Tracy, a harbinger of things to come. But, she looked visibly anxious, which is not like her at all. Barb's usually the one bursting in late with Starbucks in hand. As we got the grill ready, she dropped a bombshell. Nick had been laid off the previous week. Yep, laid off. As much as I had reservations about him, I recognized the hit to the family finances would be significant, especially since they've struggled with debt. Barb was candid. Nick had been too ashamed to tell me or anyone outside the immediate family, and it was only eating away at him more as each day passed. She told me that he'd been spending his downtime angrily job hunting, but he seemed more defeated than ever. With a deep breath, Barb asked for a favor, and it wasn't easy for her. She needed my help to talk to Nick, maybe to see if he'd accept my aid in networking or rewriting his resume since most of his job history was with his previous company. The curveball? She asked me not out of desperation but what seemed like a genuine outreach to mend our broken bonds further. She admitted, in a quiet moment of vulnerability, that she was scared not only for their future but also for what kind of example they were setting for Tracy, showing a flicker of that light I hoped would shine bright once again. I agreed to talk to Nick, cautiously optimistic about the potential for positive change. I didn't know how receptive he'd be, considering our rocky history, but I couldn't let my residual resentment get in the way of helping my sister and niece. Later on, while everyone else was chatting away, I approached Nick. It was tense at first. Imagine two cowboys at high noon in the backyard. I told him I heard about the layoff and wanted to help, whether that was connecting him with people I knew in similar industries or looking over his resume. No shame, no judgment, just help. His reaction? A mix of reluctance and relief. Taking a step I wouldn't have foreseen months ago, I offered him a guest pass to my business networking group. It was a shot in the dark, but to my surprise, he accepted, albeit guardedly. I guess sometimes when life pushes you to the edge, you realize the need to grab onto any stable offering, even if it's from the person whose lifestyle you've criticized. The barbecue ended amicably, with Tracy having a blast catching fireflies with my kids. The adults, we finished off the evening with cautiously optimistic tones and tentative steps towards rebuilding those bridges. It's a complex situation, with much left unresolved, especially concerning Nick's long-term views, which won't change overnight. But for now, Helping Nick get on his feet seems not just like a family obligation but a move to keep Tracy in a world where she can thrive without the weight of her parents' stresses unduly impacting her.